I mean, you read this note, it was so downbeat. You kind of felt like, why is he still overweight?
$9,600 for an EV.
Honestly, we're thinking it might head up back to 290. So it might take 6 months, a year.
It's the other competitors who really seem to be struggling to make an offering that can compete with Tesla. People want a Tesla, maybe they don't necessarily want an EV.
All that and more. So let's get to it. Tesla stock is down in the pre-market over 1.25%, sitting at 174.30. Year to date, we have Tesla down over 30%. Just how low can the stock go?
Let's start with Tesla shares. They're dropping for a third day in a row. Today's news, Julie, is that a very well-known Tesla bull, that would be Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley. Adam takes out the red pen and starts cutting. Yeah, does maintain his buy rating, we want to stress that, but does cut his price target, takes that down to 320, and tells his clients the company could report a loss this year based on GAAP accounting. EV demand slowing, he tells them. Companies are dumping their EVs, hybrids competing for the marginal EV buyer, he says. And this coming, of course, as Tesla's stock has really suffered a rough slide so far this year. We're down about 30% now.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue even that Jonas is a little bit late to the party. I mean, a lot of what he talks about in his note is stuff that other people who are not as sanguine on Tesla have been talking about in this market already. One of the interesting points here, he says that Tesla's product is relatively aged. That it is, that the other major automakers are sort of earlier in their cycles, which has been a disadvantage for them. At this point, he says, maybe Tesla's product is not as exciting.
To those individuals that think Tesla's models are aged, they obviously have never been inside one. Forget the fact that there's been refreshes to the Model S, the X, 3, and soon to be Y. I just seen my first Cybertruck in the wild, f***ing jet black, looking sweet than a mop. Regardless of whether you think their product is aged or not, and it's not, it's still the best thing cruising on four wheels, not to mention it's manufactured as cleanly as possible, resulting in industry-leading margins.
Many analysts on the street are waiting, of course, for them to come out with their next mass market automobile. So that's something to consider as well. He's also talking about the penetration of Tesla in the mature markets like California, for example, already. And he also, of course, talks about competition in China.
Yeah, I mean, you read this note, it was so downbeat. You kind of felt like, why is he still overweight? He explains to his clients, listen, because I think it's an auto stock, but I also think this is an energy play, an AI play, a robotics play. So he's sticking with it, despite what he acknowledges is just overwhelmingly, he says, bearish sentiment at this point.
The EV pricing war escalating in China, with BYD slashing the cost of its least expensive vehicle. Yahoo Finance's Price of Romanian joins us with the details. Now, this isn't the first time. BYD has been rolling out a series of these cuts.
Yeah, this follows a price cut that they had for one of their other EVs known as the, I gotta look this up here, the Yuan Plus crossover got that price cut, on Monday. Now we're seeing the Seagull, the cheapest EV, a new updated version of it, cutting the price by 5% here to just under $10,000 US. This is a new updated version of their entry-level EV. And I'm shocked that the BYD can make money off this thing because it's so cheap. Like I mentioned before, it also comes after the other price cut for the BYD Yuan Plus. And also this week, Tesla cut prices for its China offerings, the Model 3 and Model Y. So a big brewing price war here coming in China, and BYD is just the latest example of another, the top maker there, EV maker in China, having to actually bring prices down too.
Price war. People think that this is against other EVs. No, BYD is doing this in order to gain more market share against internal combustion engines. Don't get me wrong, in the distant future, 15, 20 years from now, these guys may actually be competitors and have price wars with each other. But at the moment, the enemy of my enemy is my friend right now. And the enemy for both of these companies is the sale of internal combustion engines.
Praz, $9,600 for an EV, right? I mean, that is just tough to compete. And you have heard from so many of these Western car makers about the concern about BYD taking those kind of prices to other markets. Obviously, they've already been importing into places like Europe, but it looks like the EU is considering some additional tariffs.
Yeah, that's right. They're concerned that they have new evidence that shows that the Chinese government is sort of illegally supporting these EV makers in China using things like direct transfer funds, tax breaks, provisions of goods and services at a cheaper, below market price to help and aid their local Chinese EV makers. And then that's sort of in violation of potentially trade agreements that Europe has with China and places like that.
What? Are you suggesting that the Chinese government is playing dirty with their EV car makers? Oh, it's probably true. Who knows? Go ahead and raise your tariffs. Give your car makers the time they need to maybe even try to compete in this market, but honestly, it's probably a bit too late. Regardless of price cuts, incentives, tariffs, what have you, Tesla's presence is going to continue to grow worldwide, especially in the EU if they start raising tariffs on those Chinese imports. But I just want to drive home this point. BYD, Tesla, all the price cuts, all the incentives, it's not to compete with each other. It's to knock off the internal combustion engine. Alleviate the pressure on price, and you're going to see an influx of demand.
Taking a look at Tesla, it's in focus. The stock has been under pressure. It's down about 28% this year alone. Tony Zapparo's with us, CEO of Equity, set to talk about the name here. Your thoughts about Tesla? I mean, what's the big picture on Tesla? What do we need to know?
The biggest thing on Tesla that we feel like is it's a trader's market. And so when we're looking at it, we see year over year, it's been experiencing what we consider a multiple compression. Revenue income has been increasing, yet price to earnings, price to sales, price to book has constantly been going down.
Price to earnings, all that. Tesla was just a static car company. I might give that some credence. But the deferred revenue from FSD alone is enough for me to kind of like, maybe there'll be some surprises on the financials later. The potential revenue streams from Tesla, it's kind of hard to predict. Tesla Electric is my energy provider. I have Tesla insurance. These are revenue streams that you don't really think about until they start showing up in the financials. Ford just started using the Tesla supercharger network with everyone else to follow. Revenue streams that you just don't really comprehend if you're looking at it as just an automobile company.
Our whole narrative is in the short term, we're looking really at two gaps that occurred. One about a year and a half ago was down at the 145 level, and the one above happened about 6 months ago, was at the 290 level. And for about the last 3-4 months, we've actually been pretty bearish on the name, thinking that it's going to actually go down, cover the 145, maybe take another hit at 100.
What? Take another hit at please let it do that. I intend to be placing protective puts all the way down, recalibrating when I'll decide to go back into call territory. But if the stock brushes back over at 100, that would be such a blessing. I plan to take full advantage of that, cash register. I plan to take full advantage of that.
Well, that's terrible for the shareholders if they see 145 or they see 100 and it bottoms out and head higher.
I beg to differ. That would be great news.
It's going to head up to that.
It might take a little time, but honestly, we're thinking it might head up back to 290. So it might take 6 months, a year. But one thing we know about Tesla is you really can't predict where those shareholders take it. And so we think it could rip to a 200% gain in the medium term.
You're damn right.
You know, Adam Jonas over at Morgan Stanley, who came out today, and he put a target on this one. I think it was 320 from 345, but kept his overweight rating and sort of really valued Tesla not as a car company. I think only 1/5 of it was actually based on autos, and just looking at Tesla as something else. And what do you think of that? I mean, when you view Tesla, do you view it as a car company or a tech company or an energy company? I mean, what is this? AI?
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit of both, and it's transitioning from being known, right, generating a lot of its profits from being a car company. And as we know, the last couple years, really 3 years ago, a lot of stories came out about how they're going to face tighter margins, right, competition in the marketplace. And that's really what we feel has been priced in and why it's taken such a hit. But exactly like the analyst at Morgan Stanley was talking about, it's got licensing, it's got so much potential in the technology space and in the infrastructure space that we think that that's where that transition and bottoming out is going to happen. And then people are going to jump on the bandwagon again, realizing that it can grow and it can push up margins that have been so depressed lately.
Don't get it twisted. It is a car company. It's just not only a car maker. Add to the fact that they're able to manufacture said cars at industry-leading margins and still be widely popular, despite what Adam Jonas may believe to be an aged product. Get the f*** out of here with that nonsense.
Tesla stock has taken a hit so far this year, down 27%. There's been a series of issues from stock analysts stock downgrades, a dip of shipments in China, and the latest, an arson attack on Tesla's plant in Berlin. Joining us now is Tim Higgins, a Wall Street Journal reporter and a CNBC contributor. And Tim, it's good to see you. It's not like we hear great things about the entire EV market every day either, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough place to be playing, but for Tesla, it's all they're playing with, right? And the underlying story for Tesla has been about incredible rapid growth over the last few years, and now Elon and team are suggesting it's going to be much slower this year. And all of these signs in the last few weeks and months are really kind of making it even more worrisome just how slow that growth is going to be.
What is that saying? Be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Don't let fear push you out of your conviction of Tesla, because I guarantee you in a decade's time, you may have to deal with a little bit of suffering.
Look over the last 3 years, for example, the first quarter has shown growth that's been better than the fourth quarter, which is really rather remarkable if you think about it, because who wants to go buy a new car in winter and kick the tires, right? But that just kind of underscores how much growth there's been there. And now there's real concern that maybe this quarter won't be as good as last quarter. And that's worrisome to some people.
Worrisome? Oh, sounds like fear to me.
Do you think eventually that some of the mandates that we've had from the Biden administration, do they get pushed back? And does that matter to Tesla? Is Tesla dependent on I mean, I know that certainly subsidies help, but on the mandates to get to a certain place by 2030, if that gets pushed back, would that hurt Tesla?
Well, the tax breaks that have been passed certainly help make these cars more affordable for Tesla. Now we've seen them expanded, so Tesla has them again. Without a doubt, that helps as Elon fights to get every penny of cost as he can out of those vehicles. But he has argued in the past that he's not dependent upon these sorts of things.
Because they're not. Tax breaks, incentives, they do help push the needle for demand, but if they were not there, Tesla would be just fine, considering they have the best manufacturing and industry-leading margins to play with. This just doesn't happen by accident. You make the best product at the best price. Lo and behold, you've got customers.
His goal at Tesla is to make a vehicle that is cooler, is better than a gas car, and that will be what appeals to people and drives kind of that EV transition. And in a lot of ways, that has been true for Tesla. It's the other competitors who really seem to be struggling to make an offering that can compete with Tesla. People want a Tesla. Maybe they don't necessarily want an EV.
Ding, 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 ding. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. Your mother. Right. Regardless of what model that you decide to get, it'll be the best thing you've driven on four wheels. Performance, functionality, and dare I say style is what will make Tesla consumers the most brand loyal, regardless of the price. Once you've purchased one, it'll be tough to go to anything else. In conclusion, Adam Jonas cuts his price target for Tesla but still maintains an overweight rating. BYD and Tesla continue to cut prices over there in China. The effort to take market share away from the internal combustion engine over there should be the easiest in the world, but even still, they're facing some resistance, having to lower their prices to drum up a little bit more demand. I guarantee you, these companies are not trying to undercut each other. They are attempting to dissuade consumers from going to the internal combustion engine, which over in China has almost 2/3 of the market. It's not surprising that further penetration is going to take a little bit more effort. And there is an ungodly amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt surrounding TSLA. If you've done the homework, trust your conviction. There's no other way for me to put this. For me, it's a no-brainer. Even if Tesla stock were to sink to $100 per share, I'll be smiling as I press the buy button. Needless to say, your boy likes a good discount. That's all I got for you today. Be easy. Peace.